But we do have two new ball players on the basketball team.
It's true.
One is more worthy of discussion than the other. I'll go to the one that's we'll just cover this quickly. They have a walk-on by the name of Demarion Yates. He goes by Dink. He's a forward, and he's probably not going to play much. He's a walk-on. The one that does matter, though, is PJ Carter. PJ Carter comes to Memphis from UTSA, is where he played last year. He ended up committing to Rice and signing to Rice a month ago. He gets out of that letter of intent. Here comes Slick Rip swooping in last second like he did with Emmanuel Acott a couple years ago when Emmanuel Acott got to campus and Rick convinced him to go to Western Kentucky. So he did that same thing with PJ Carter, and I think it adds some nice depth, another wing piece. I see no issues with it. I think it's actually pretty valuable to add a little more depth to this team.
Yeah, I think it's a solid addition. I don't think it's anything to get overly excited about, but someone that averaged nearly 10 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, good free throw shooter, good three-point shooter, shot 40% from the three-point line last year. Like you said, it's a good depth add. It's another one of those that's not going to raise the ceiling of this team tremendously, but it's one of those pieces that you need, a guy that can potentially come off the bench and play quality minutes, and that's really about all you're going to ask from PJ Carter.
Yeah, I mean, 10 scholarship players, like that. Right. That's what he does. It rounds it out to 10. I mean, I feel uncomfortable sometimes when you get like 8, 9 scholarship players, 8, 9 rotation players. That can get dicey, bro. Yeah. Like that can get into get into some bad situations. You have just one injury.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think
they already have Baraka Okogie missing for the first part of next year. So like, I think just having that extra body is helpful. And 40% from 3, I can get down with that. More of a catch and shoot guy. He's okay off the dribble, but he's not like elite at it. But this is a guy who's going to stand around the perimeter on the offensive end, find his spots, and hopefully knock down some open threes. And on the defensive end, he can fit in. He's not like elite on that end, but he's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those guys that you hope comes in and does exactly what he's asked to do. You know, but play well in the minutes that he's out there, not try to do too much, fill his role and do what's asked of him, and he's fine. And like you said, it's good injury insurance as well, because you don't want to be in a position where you lose one guy and it derails stuff terribly bad. You have someone that can come in and fill that role if need be, if there is an injury.
Yeah. No, one thing that is like an ongoing conversation with other folks is like, how do you feel about getting these guys from just shit programs, really bad programs? UTSA was 11-21 last year.
Yeah,
they were horrid. Really bad. And I don't know if they should have been that bad, because I think 4 of their top 5 scorers have all transferred up. You know, like they had, good off seasons where they were able, or good seasons to where this off season they were able to go. I think one went to UCF. You have PJ Carter at Memphis. Jordan Ivy Curry was their leading scorer, 17 points per game. He transferred up. I think he's the one that went to UCF actually. But I mean, how much do you buy into some of that where it's like PJ Haggerty came from Tulsa? This guy came from UTSA. Some of these guys just came from bad programs and they're taking a step up.
Yeah, I think it's got to be at least a little bit concerning, even if you can see the production and the talent. You have to also peel back the layers and say, well, these players were relied on more at their last stop with lower expectations than they likely will be here outside of PJ Haggerty. Obviously, the expectations for him are very high by fans and by the staff as well. But some of these guys, it's like, okay, if you averaged 10 points per game at UTSA and played 20 minutes a game, I think is around what he played. Yeah, 19.8 minutes per game. So if that was your expectation at UTSA, what's the expectation at Memphis? Is it 12 to 13 minutes a game and 4 or 5 points per game? It's just you have to kind of get your expectations lower. Sounds negative, but you have to kind of you have to temper expectations for these players, because they're playing in a completely different environment than they just were. Like most of these guys were some of the better players on their team that were expected to shoulder the load. They're not expected to do that at Memphis. And so it gets a little complicated when looking at that. But I think at least a little bit you have to put expectations down. Not necessarily as a knock on them, just as, you have to look at it realistically, saying this is what they're coming from, this is what they did there. Minutes will be lower, production will likely be lower, and expectations can't be exactly what they did at their previous stop. I think Nick Jourdain last year is a good example of that as well, to kind of give you a at-home example. Is he didn't play the same role at Memphis as he did at Temple. He was a lot more important to that Temple team than he was at Memphis. He kind of became more of a rotational guy at Memphis. And not that he was lighting the world on fire or anything, but if you watched the Temple games, it was clear how important he was to them. And for Memphis, it was like, okay, he's got to find his role here. He's not going to be as productive, but he's still important to the team. So I think that's really, when you're looking at guys coming from lower levels up, that's kind of what the expectation has to be set at.
Yeah, and I would imagine for PJ Carter, there shouldn't be any expectation, visions of grandeur. He shouldn't be expecting to be like a main cog, which to me is a positive, because it's like you're not upsetting the apple cart. We have somewhat of an idea of what this pecking order is going to be with PJ Haggerty and Tyrese Hunter at the top. Just add some role players around the way, some guys that, in the event of an injury or in the event of foul trouble, stuff like that, we can throw these guys in there, give them some rotational minutes, and we're not going to fall off a cliff. I think PJ Carter fits into that category really well.